Welcome into the program. It is Orange and Blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason asking a question that I think Broncos country wants the answer to. Are the Broncos the most dangerous team in the AFC? Mace, we got a fun one today.
Yeah. You could say they're the most dangerous team if you give them just enough of a window to get it done at the end.
Right.
And of course, the size of that window, I think, depends on the quality of the team, because the Giants left a 3-score window in the fourth quarter, and the Broncos bolted through. So if the Chiefs, for example, had left a 3-score window, the outcome would have been a sad one. But for example, the Texans were up 15-7 going to the fourth quarter in Houston, and that was just enough for the Broncos to waltz through, get 11 points, and walk off with a win. Of course, you know, would that outcome have been different if CJ Stroud had not suffered a concussion earlier in that game? Maybe, but perhaps, if says ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. You play the game as it comes, as it's presented, and of course the Broncos did play that game without Pat Surtain. That was the first full game they played without Pat Surtain, so it's not like the Broncos were without anybody. I mean, then they've played without Ben Powers for a few weeks, and Ben Powers, if you go by the metrics, Ben Powers is a top 6 guard in terms of pressure rate allowed so far this year. So it's not like the Broncos were at full strength either.
Right. And I consider danger of like, okay, if we look at New England, the 9-2 teams, if we're across the board in the NFC, we won't talk about them, but like the Rams are dangerous. Seattle's got some danger to them. But I look at the Broncos, Mace, in comparison with New England. New England's played, what, the third easiest schedule? And the Broncos have played about the 15th, middle of the pack schedule this year. And I go, okay, the Broncos are 9-2 and they haven't played their best football. I'm not saying New England has played their best football, but I believe that the Patriots are clicking more than the Broncos are clicking. Clearly, offensively is what we're talking about. But if that offense just comes around a little bit more, 75% of the offense, whatever number you want to give me, I'm going to agree with you, because I look at this team, and you mentioned the fourth quarter, I think that can make them the most dangerous in the conference because they're never out of it with Bo Nix.
Yeah, and that's been proven. They are a comeback team. Bo Nix, for whatever reason, I think it has something to do with the fact that he's better up-tempo, which we all know, and that he's got ability beyond structure, and that he certainly does have an even-keeled nature about him. Bo Nix has that intangible ability to get it done when it matters most. And here's the thing. That does, I think, now, that does feed off itself going forward, Cease, because, and Lil Jordan Humphrey mentioned it last week when he said, hey, you know, it was mentioned last week regarding Lil Jordan Humphrey, when it was like he was going to people on the Giants sideline saying, hey, you know, they're not out of it. Like, they're not out of it.
Right.
So here, going forward, what you're going to have is in the back of teams' minds, even as they build a lead, they're going to know, all right, are we waiting for the house of cards to topple? And the first thing that goes wrong for them, that doubt's going to creep into their mind. So the Broncos have this little psychological advantage to them going forward, because when one thing goes wrong, even if their foe is leading, that team's going to think, is it starting to happen?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it kind of feeds on itself going forward. And the Broncos, of course, have that demeanor now about them to where they're like, we're never out of a game. We've always got a chance. And obviously, it didn't work out for this team in the postseason 3 years earlier. But remember, Minnesota in 2022 was winning a bunch of close games.
Right.
And then they played Indianapolis in December and fell way behind. But what did they do? They came roaring back and pulled off a comeback unlike any that had been seen in the NFL before. Like that's what that sort of mentality ends up breeding in a team and even in an opponent. So, I mean, heck, it wouldn't even surprise me at all if one of the things we see from this Broncos team down the stretch is a comeback even more audacious than the one we saw against the Giants.
Yeah, I was thinking that as you were saying that, Mace, like the history and kind of what we're seeing in these dynamic comebacks for the Broncos, we might not have even seen the best one because if you're an opponent, something goes wrong, you're like, oh, crap, we left them a window. But think about if you're the Broncos and you're kind of stumbling out the gates and you're just like, yeah, we'll be good.
Yeah.
So I think that mindset works both ways, against the opponent and then for you.
The thing that you actually want to happen, though, perhaps for the Broncos in terms of maybe taking them to another level as a team, even though you don't want a loss in the pursuit of the number 1 seed, as we've talked about, because of the value of said number 1 seed, given the quality of seeds 5, 6, and 7 that we expect to see, because I still think Kansas City is going to end up in the playoffs. And that's going to be an amazingly dangerous low seed if Patrick Mahomes is healthy. And you're weighing that, okay, you want the number 1 seed, but a loss somewhere along the way might not be the worst thing to happen. And a loss that happens because, all right, we didn't play well out of the blocks, and then it caught up to us.
Right.
And I mentioned, of course, those 2022 Minnesota Vikings. And they did have a loss funny thing is they did actually have 2 losses along the way down the stretch. Those weren't close losses, though. They lost by 11, they lost by 24, so they didn't lose their close game mojo. They finally did lose the close game mojo when they got to the postseason. So,
right.
So that, you can have the loss, but maybe it doesn't do everything that you want it to. One thing I will say, though, just for Broncos history, and I point this out a lot, is that every Broncos world champion had a 2-game losing streak in December. And the 2015 Broncos in particular, the skid that they had against the Raiders and Steelers, that really was the rallying point for the team that pushed it to the run that they had in January and going to the Super Bowl. That was the moment that they really refocused. The 2-game losing streak, and then kind of sort of the final refocusing moment for them was when they fell behind 14-0 against Cincinnati and nearly fell behind 17-0. Cincinnati misses the field goal. The Broncos came back after that, won that game. And of course, next week it was Peyton Manning coming in. But the Broncos in their world championship seasons kind of needed a little bit of that corrective moment that happened for them. A moment that they did not get in 1996 when they went up to Green Bay with everything clinched and their starters benched and they lost. Their losses happened after it had been wrapped up. And so when they went down, there was nothing to kind of correct them, and then they didn't really get back on track. So it's sort of a fine line that you're walking there.
Yeah, you're walking a fine line, but you've got this Broncos defense, and as we talk about the offense coming around, Mason, they'll be incredibly dangerous if you get 70% output, 75%. But this defense, if I think about Drake May, and you and I both appreciate Drake May, you a big May guy before the draft. You talked about him before anybody else. This kid can ball. If you didn't think that, you were just flat out wrong. The kid's always been able to ball. But I think of this defense with that pressure. Yeah. And I think of the weapons, and they can run the ball, okay? Whether it's Ramondre Stevenson healthy or Travion Henderson, New England can run the ball, setting up play action for Drake May. But this Broncos defense makes them incredibly dangerous because they can shut down a franchise quarterback like Drake May. They can handle that.
I mean, they just neutralized Patrick Mahomes. They forced Patrick Mahomes into an extraordinary mistake that you could say probably cost the Chiefs the game. That throw that he had in the third quarter when he was rolling out to the right.
Yep.
I mean, Patrick Mahomes made a mistake that Bo Nix didn't make. Bo Nix was the better quarterback in that game. I don't care what QBR says. Bo Nix was the better quarterback on Sunday. Now, yeah, Patrick Mahomes has, he is overall the better quarterback. There's no doubt about that. But on Sunday, Bo Nix was the better quarterback, period. So the Broncos D forces you into uncomfortable spots. And that Patriots protection up front, it's better than it was last year when Drake went in there and did not have a shot. I mean, if you want to watch a quarterback who just did not stand a prayer of being protected, watch the Patriots Chargers film last year.
Yep.
And it's to the credit of everybody in New England that they've taken that offensive line and brought it to where it was in a single off season. They still have more work to do, but they've made it competent enough. And certainly Drake himself upgrades the protection too. But the Broncos are still going to be able to force Drake May into some uncomfortable spots. Now, that being said, with Drake, you have to defend the whole field. But the Broncos have the secondary to take care of that. Watch the Broncos coverage on Sunday. Yeah, you're frustrated with the penalties by Riley Moss, but when Patrick Mahomes drops back to throw most of the day, he doesn't have good options. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing. You are getting the coverage back there as well as the pass rush up front. By the way, Vance Joseph may have finally found his tight end stopper. That was something, Luca Evans and I were talking about after the game in the press box. Luca Evans at the Denver Post. And I said, VJ may have finally found his tight end stopper just in time to go take a head coaching job somewhere else since he's going to be such a hot candidate. All the years VJ's been looking for that guy to solve the riddle of tight ends for him because his defenses have always had trouble stopping tight ends. And now with Jahdae Barron, he may have finally found that guy. And yet if he takes a head coaching job somewhere else, he may be leaving that guy.
And then he's going to be looking. He's always going to be chasing Amy or chasing Jahdae, as this would be. Yeah. But I just look at this playoff picture and the way it can set up. And, go get that number 1 seed. Make a run. They're close enough to do that. I never said number 1 seed. You never said number 1 seed. We're excited about this Broncos team making the playoffs. But damn it, it's right there for them. So go on the attack and get it if you can. It is orange and blue today. Mace, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Then I have a public service announcement I want to run by you super quick.
Today's episode of Orange and Blue Today is presented by Ramos Law, the official injury law firm partner of the Denver Broncos. Ramos Law was founded by Dr. Joseph Ramos, an attorney and ER doctor, to provide exceptional care to those injured in accidents. With a unique understanding of both medicine and law, the Ramos Law team is built to fight for you every step of the way. Experience the Ramos Law difference. Contact them today at ramoslaw.com.
It grinds my gears when I hear people say the Broncos still might be fraudulent. And I've seen that from NFL reporters saying, hey, they still may be, you're 9 wins, you're not fraudulent. We need to stop with this. You put out some numbers about Kansas City because everyone's moving the goalposts on the Broncos. Like, oh, well, they got to beat Kansas City. And then they beat Kansas City. Oh, well, Kansas City's not what they used to be. You put out some numbers, and others have as well, about the advanced data showing the efficiency metrics of the Chiefs. They are the same as a year ago. They beat a damn good team in Kansas City, and they are not a fraudulent 9-2.
I mean, you can say what you will about the FPI, ESPN FPI metric. They've got Kansas City number 1 now. They've got Denver. Unfortunately, they've got Denver and New England as well. Denver and New England down low. Now, The interesting thing about FPI, it's got some hits and misses over the years in terms of being predictive of what happens in the postseason, for example. But like last year, for example, it had Minnesota at 14-3, only sixth, and then the Vikings went in the playoffs and were one and done. It had interesting thing on FPI last year, Kansas City at 15-2, it only had them fifth. But then they went on and beat Baltimore, who was a top FPI in the AFC Championship game. So FPI does have some misses, but it is worth noting that that it still lists the Chiefs as number one. It's worth noting that this is a Chiefs offense that is still number 4 in the league in success rate. It's number 3 in the league in EPA per play. Like this is still a very efficient Chiefs team. Actually, in some ways, a more efficient Chiefs team than last year on the offensive side of the ball. And the Broncos took care of business against them. So the difference in this Chiefs team, quite simply, is 12-0 in close games last year, 0-5 this year. Now, some of it, there are people out there saying, oh, maybe they're not getting the calls because there was that study that was floating out there about, the Chiefs
yes.
getting the calls over time. There was actually one thing I saw today floating out there that are they no longer getting the calls because we don't see Taylor Swift, around as much anymore, and so are they no longer getting favoritism because of that? I mean, there's all sorts of there are all sorts of hypotheses out there. There, one seeming to be more ridiculous than the next.
Right.
But sometimes this can be as simple as over time, typically, and sometimes it takes a long time. Close game in baseball, it's shown over the years that close games tend to, one run games tend to even out once you take a large enough sample size. And I think what we're seeing, it can basically be with the Chiefs. You're seeing regression to the mean. I mean, the Broncos, they're 6-0 in their last 6 one-score games, all since the beginning of October. And they were 2-8 in their previous one-score games. I mean, sometimes these things even out a little more quickly than you expect. Frankly, in some ways, I think this Chiefs team is a little bit better and more efficient than the one last year. But they're not winning the close games. But that's still a very, very good team that the Broncos just beat. I don't think fundamentally it's a team that's much different. And frankly, we wrote off Travis Kelce. Maybe we wrote him off a little bit too soon because he's still making plays out there. So, it's a Chiefs team that's still going to end up in the playoffs. I mean, you look at the schedule they've got. Unless Patrick Mahomes suffers an injury, they're going to be in the postseason. They're going to be there in the end. So, and
they're going to be fired up to make a run.
Yes, they may even be more fired up having to do it on the road. Mm-hmm. Like sometimes that can galvanize a team. Okay, maybe we got to do this the hard way, right? Like
they don't think we can.
The Chiefs haven't been used to being the hunter rather than hunted, and sometimes that can be a great motivator. Baltimore's in a little bit of the same position as well. If Baltimore's D is effective, I think that Baltimore's probably a bit more dangerous of a team than Kansas City, but they're both teams that are going to fall into that category probably of you don't want to face them in January, and they may be two of the teams that the Broncos are staring down in January. So if Denver navigates this and ends up in the Super Bowl, there will be no doubt that they will have earned their way to Santa Clara. It's going to be a rough ride.
That's what dangerous teams do. Do you think the Broncos are the most dangerous team on the AFC side of the bracket? Drop a comment down below. And it's a Broncos bye week, but Mason and I got some big plans for you this week on Orange and Blue Today, including report card grades and my opinion on special teams that's going to make Andrew Mason's head spin.
Uh-oh.
Wait till Friday's show. He is Andrew Mason. I am Cecil Lammey. Mace, how can folks help us out here on our YouTube channel?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell.
So that you
never
miss vid. Air high five there for one. Andrew Mason. I am Cecil Lammey. Follow Mace on all the socials at Mace Denver. OBT is a BFD. Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay tuned. And would you please stay frosty?